Now, let's gather around the roundish table. Joining us this week, Dr. Nicole Hemmer from the United States Study Centre at the University of Sydney. Nicole, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Good to be here.
That "you didn't build it" gate, for want of a better term, it has been running solidly, certainly on Fox News and on conservative talk radio in the United States now. 2 weeks this has been going on. Do you think it's having an impact, or is this just preaching to the converted?
Well, I think it's having an impact in the sense that it is reinforcing a narrative that the Republicans really want to reinforce for this election cycle, which is this idea that government interferes with business rather than government can help support business, can help bring the economy back. So I think that what gets said in right-wing media gets reflected in the rest of the American media, and I think that it will have some impact.
Nicole, they tried this in 2008 with Spread the Wealth, the Joe the Plumber grab, the initial grab. It was everywhere, spread the wealth, spread the wealth. Do you think, A, that was effective, and B, this would be more or less effective than that? I mean, they've tried it before. Right.
I think that it will be more effective this time around because the economy is so central to this election, and you have sort of less of a situation in which, Obama was doing so much better in 2008. So in 2012, when he is already on the ropes a bit, I think it's a little easier to get that message to stick.
Does the truth matter? Does the literal intent of what Obama was saying, which he maintains was, he was saying you didn't build the roads, the bridges, the infrastructure that helped you to build your business, but taken in isolation, that clip seems to say you didn't build your business. If that clip out of context speaks to a greater truth in the minds of conservatives, at least, that this is the way he really thinks, even if he didn't really mean to say it, does that matter?
Well, it matters in the sense that it matters what Obama was talking about, and he was making a very true and a very non-controversial point about the fact that public works benefit us all, and we all benefit from government spending. Ultimately, does it matter for the election? Not really. I mean, you didn't build it is the thing that you hear. It's not the greater context.
So now they're talking about Mitt Romney and all the gaffes that he's managed to make, I think at Heathrow Airport, certainly very early on in this overseas trip of his. What do you make of that? Because clearly the media has been very open to another narrative, which is Mitt Romney makes gaffes, doesn't say necessarily what he means.
Right. Well, it does reinforce the narrative. Mitt Romney does make gaffes. He makes them all the time. I'm sure that it is a little harrowing for him since his father's gaffes really sank his 1968 campaign.
Now, explain that history, because this could be really, 60s flashbacks for Mitt Romney. His dad's presidential campaign came asunder for similar reasons.
Right. So in late 1967, Mitt Romney's father, George Romney, was in an interview. He hadn't really come up with a policy on Vietnam, which is troubling for a presidential candidate in 67. So he finally came up with a policy. He decided that even though he had supported the war previously, he was changing his position. And in order to explain that, he said he had received the greatest brainwashing from American generals who had been showing him around in Vietnam. And in 68, brainwashing had a very significant connotation, and it just sank him.
It was like Manchurian Candidate.
Yeah,
very much
film
so,
came out a few years before that. Yeah. And these seem to be very much a rite of passage. The presidential candidate, after securing the nomination of their party, they then go on this sort of grand tour. And in Obama's case, 4 years ago, of course, Berlin, a couple of 100,000 people turned out to see him. It was the peak of Obama rock star mania. Romney doesn't seem to be getting that kind of reception so far.
No, well, I mean, Obama was in many ways, both in the United States and abroad, a rock star. He was seen as change. He was seen as a break from the Bush era. Romney hasn't inspired his base or other people to come out for him like that. He's never going to be a rock star candidate. He's not trying to be a rock star candidate. He's basically running a Rose Garden campaign. So he's going on this bit of a tour. But
on this gaffe thing, take, for example, the Bob Carr one earlier this week. Now, Romney reported exactly what Bob Carr said, word for word. When Bob Carr clarified, he clarified with exactly the same words. And when you look at the wider context in which he spoke, Romney, he wasn't really mischaracterising it in a terrible way either. Yeah, he gave his own little tweak, like a presidential candidate will, but it wasn't outrageously lying or anything. But then the media blew it up as if there was this huge conflict, and it became a story because of the way it was interpreted by the media. And my question is, how much of this is Romney actually making gaffes, and how much is the media looking for gaffes and blowing up one of the 5 slightly unfelicitous things you say in a day?
Right. Well, there's a 24/7 media cycle that's covering these candidates. They're bound to say something that can be taken out of context. Romney does make gaffes, particularly when it comes to his wealth. He has a tendency to speak in a very tenured way about those things. But sure, the media has already developed a narrative about Romney's gaffes, and they're constantly looking for reinforcement. Yeah. And he gives them material.
That's true.
Is it going to make a difference, given that so much of what people are seeing is now highly controlled? It isn't the gaffes, it is the paid advertising, which is coming in torrents now.
Sure. I mean, yes, the ads are going to make a difference. I mean, ultimately, this is going to be an election about the economy and a referendum on Barack Obama's presidency. But to the extent that these ads can sort of change the way people think about what's responsible for economic problems, for why the United States is having the issues that it's having right now, I think that they do have an impact.
When we talk about the ads, last week on the show we mentioned the fact that at the moment they're only spending money that they raised for the primaries, and Romney spent a lot more money against the Republicans than Barack Obama spent against Democrats. And so at the moment Obama has, I think, $72 million left to spend before the convention, and Romney only has $20 million left. So at the moment...
You've got about a month to do that then.
Yeah, and if you have a look at the graph for a second, you can see, if you go to the laptop, you can see that right now it's all the super PACs doing the spending. Obama's way out here, and then all these super PACs doing the spending, and then Romney's doing his spending. So actually, his message has been brought forward almost entirely by super PACs. Does that have an effect? That he has no control over the people putting forth his message in these ads?
I think that suggesting that he has no control over what the super PACs do is probably a bridge too far. But it does cause some problems for candidates when the person who's putting forward your narrative doesn't necessarily get clearance from you and may not be staying on message. We saw that in the primaries.
So they could go more negative than Romney would want them to.
Right. They could go more negative. They could talk about the wrong things. We saw this with Santorum. His super PAC donors ended up saying some off-color things about contraception, and it became this big brouhaha for him that he would have probably never said. But so it can be problematic that way. I think that the super PACs that are spending most of the money really want Romney to win, and so they're going to stay on the message that he wants to send.
Well, Nicole Hemmer, good to see you again on the program. You're heading back to the US soon. We'll try and catch up with you again there. Safe travels.
Great. Thank you so much.